Right. Let me get through here without taking the tablecloth off and shooting off the edge of the stage. Nothing I haven't done before. All right, welcome everyone. My name's Lesa Bradshaw from Bradshaw Consulting. And I'm here to change thinking a little bit about disability as a form of diversity. Can I ask you guys just a question to start off? Okay. How many of you are looking for black female with a disability, with a matric, but not too disabled, just a little bit, because of the environment that they've got to go into? Okay, how many of you have been asked for that demand? Okay, and we need 450 of them, please, in this area, that can get on our transport system, get to work on time, operate in an usual environment without any changes, and, you know, if possible, if they could not come on site at all, just outsource them, that'll be even better. Okay, you've heard the familiar challenge. Right, so here's the thing about disability. We're getting a bit confused about disability and its role that it has to play in the economy. Okay, and I want to try and flip that thinking a little bit to challenge the way we approach this inclusion journey. Just a quick question of the audience to illustrate my point. How many of you went to school with somebody with a disability in your classroom? Okay, you guys are quite happening. There's a few more hands than usual. Okay, how many of you know somebody with a disability that works with you as a colleague in your workplace? Okay? How many of you know of somebody with a disability in your community, in your town, your gogo, your family member, someone that lives down the road? Pretty much all of us. Okay, so what we just saw there is a recognition of the fact that disability is actually tremendously common. Am I right? Okay, but we just don't get exposed to it at school. It's not included or integrated in school. We don't work with people with disabilities commonly in our everyday work environment. So the reason why disability looks so abnormal is not because it is abnormal. It's because it's not included in the level playing field that we operate in the economic environment. Okay, so I wanted to just challenge your thinking a little bit with my presentation. Bradshaw is all about disability inclusion. Apparently I have a squeak in my wheel, ignore me. And it's all about talking around disability, creating cultures of inclusion, and being part of the journey to say, well, let's change our thinking and let's try and get this diversity and inclusion journey going in a meaningful and sustainable way. I want to ask you a couple of questions just about the statistics. Did you know that 15% of the world's population have a disability? There are 1 billion people. It's the largest minority group in the world. And yet, it's one of the most underrepresented in the economy. Okay? Look at that one. 1 in 4 of today's 20-year-olds will acquire a disability before they retire. That's our kids. Okay? And the reason is because we're living longer. Thanks to our retirement funds, we're working longer as well. And so the chances of acquiring some sort of disability in your journey is quite high. Unemployment amongst people with a disability is as high as 80%. All right, and that's worldwide. In South Africa, it's even worse. Don't get excited. Okay. Less than 2% of employed people in South Africa that have a disability are being promoted. So we're letting you into the entry-level jobs, but you can't go any further. I had such a giggle the other day because I had a perfect metaphor to illustrate how we're doing disability inclusion at the moment. We're saying, you know what, welcome. You can come into our playing field, but you can't play. See? I want you all, as you leave the auditorium, to have a look at the top left and right. There is a parking space with a wheelchair sign, right? So you can come in and you can sit in the auditorium up there, but there's no microphone and there's no desk. So you can come, but you can't participate and you can't speak. That is a metaphor to show you how disability is currently being approached. And yet it's such an easy thing to change if we just start flipping our thinking around inclusion. My other favorite thing, which I always love to share with my friends that are over 45, is past 45, it's a slippery, slidey slope. All I'm saying is you pedestrians start to wear out. Your joints start to give in. Your back starts to go. Your knees start to happen. Eh? And statistically, you have a much higher rate of acquiring a disability after 45 years of age. Now, those are people with skills, with talent, with work experience. And our practice is to say, oh, sorry, you broke. Well, there's our medical payout. Sorry about that. Bye-bye. Very little is focused on saying, well, let's retain this talent and see what we can do to include. Okay? Do you know what? I want to know what the leading cause of disability in South Africa today is. Any guesses? Car accidents and motor, that's one of the top, but it's not the highest. It's a stroke. What causes a stroke? Hands up. How many are stressed? I'm just saying, people, it's a bit of a good strategy to say, well, let's make our work environment inclusive because, tick, tick. All right. So one kind of diversity, people can join in about 3 seconds flat. And yet we've done very little to say, let's make it inclusive. So my life can continue. I can continue to earn an income. I can continue to contribute. I can continue to support my family. Okay, 70% of adults in our working age group that have a disability, we're not born with that disability. They acquired it. All righty, so give some points to ponder there. How are we doing in South Africa with our disability inclusion? Right now in South Africa, if you are black and female and you don't have a disability, you need to work on that. It's a missed opportunity, people. You are right at the top of the BEE food chain if you're a black person with a female with a disability. Anything else? Yeah, not so much. But all three, you're happening. So we are desperate to go out there and get our disability inclusion because we've got all these targets and pressures and objectives and everything, okay? And we want to do them all in the most expedient and cost-effective manner as possible. Right, so in South Africa, I want to compare it to the world standards. World Health Organization did a survey recently of over 51 countries. And if you can have a look there, it shows that, where is it? 19.6% of women with a disability are employed and 52% of men with a disability employed. So there's a bit of a double discrimination going on there, right? We can see that. Look at where we are in South Africa. Our last 18th Commissioner of Employment Equity report came out and said, well, we've actually gone backwards, not forwards. So only 1.3% of our top and senior management and professional levels are employed. And those are the guys that have worked and acquired their employment. They've had a bit of a, a bit of a stroke, but can still work or something like that, and they can carry on working. Look at our semi-skilled and unskilled occupational levels. Isn't that where all you guys are developing all this talent? Well, what's happening to that talent? It's not going into the workplace, that's for sure. All right, and the reason is because it's sexier for organizations to keep a churn of learners coming through to get the tax rebates and the BE scorecard points than it is to actually absorb. And only now is that practice starting to be looked at. So what are we doing here in skills development? We're developing talent which can be used in the workforce. All right? And we need to think about why we're approaching things this way. This is the journey of disability inclusion. And I find this such a powerful illustration. It started off with complete exclusion. Okay, do you know where the term handicap comes from? If you had a disability, there was no chance you were able to work at all. And so you used to sit with your cap in your hand, begging. Cap in hand, handicaps. This is how it started coming. You had no chance of supporting yourself, all right? And then we said, no, come on, that's not fair. There's a bit of human rights here, we must sort that out. And so we said, okay, well, then we'll let you go to school and you can have houses. Oh, good Lord, 7 minutes. I've got so much to say. Okay, so, but you can't, you've got to have your own. So you can have separate schooling, special schools. We're not going to include you. Separate housing. You're not going to come and, make us adapt to anything, heaven forbid. Separate transport, because we can't possibly think and plan ahead around inclusion in our transport system. And what about our learnerships? How many of you know companies that run disabled learnerships? Why would you want 50 people with a disability in one classroom? A, it's harder, and B, it's complete segregation. So what are we doing? And yet that's common practice. So we need to rethink that whole model. And then we said, well, come on, you know what? Not fair. We'll let people come to work. They can come to work and they can, but have you ever noticed, I love this, the building standards guideline. You can park in the wheelchair parking. You can get up the suicide ramp into the front door. You can get to reception and to the loo, and that's as far as you're going in that company. Okay? Once again, you can come into our world, but we're not changing our world to make it accessible. We're not doing anything to change the way we do things. We're not flexing on structures. So here is the world of work. Here are people with disabilities. They're saying, well, we'll take you, provided we don't have to do anything here. Disability inclusion is about doing this to accommodate that so that you can get an equal playing field where people can perform like everybody else. That is inclusion, okay? And then, because I'm strapped for time, We look at the last thing, which is true inclusion. How many of you know of principles of universal design or systems thinking? It's saying what benefits one group often benefits all. How many of you have had a sporting injury, hey, or operation, and you've had crutches, or you've been in a wheelchair for a little while, and you suddenly notice how it drives you mad when you've got a flight of stairs to get to your office? Now imagine your building was made accessible because it was an inclusive culture. You could still go to work. Your organization would still get productivity out of you because you could get into the office. So let me tell you, there is always, people will experience disability, hopefully temporarily, but at some point in their lives. And having an inclusive culture makes good business sense. Do you know how I choose which hotel I'm staying in when I fly to Joburg? Not just when they've got wheelchair accessible, because that means nothing. They tease you. Okay, that means nothing. It's the ones where I know that they've actually got a toilet that has metal hinges on. So when I transfer my body on it, it doesn't snap the plastic and I don't face plant in the bath. Okay? It's the ones that don't tease you by having the mirror right up on the top, so you can only see the top of your hair when you do your makeup in the morning. Okay? Or you've got to do the guppy spit because the basin's one of those trendy basins on top of a shelf. So you've got to spit your toothpaste up in an arc so that it lands in the basin. Otherwise, you've got no chance. And if you want water, you're done for. All right, so competitive edge. Those hotels I will book and I will spend money with are the ones that have taken a bit of effort to understand inclusion, to be able to make their environment accessible, and I will make sure that my staff, my word of mouth, my presentations include that kind of positive branding. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why disability inclusion is being such a sort of swear word right now. It's because it's been led by BEE compliance and tax rebates. It's a financial model. How can we get as many numbers through the system as we can in order to get the tax rebates and get the points? The problem with these kind of pressures is when you do it backwards and you do the maths, you say, right, we need 450 black females with a matric. Then we go to our learnership service providers and say, you sort it out, you find the host companies, you make sure things are done. Now with anything, if you put quantity over quality, you compromise. So what happens is you get the pretend learnerships, where they'll stretch 3 months of theory in a classroom with a whole lot of people with disabilities in one room over 12 months, and where the workplace is simulated. How do you learn basic skills like what's going to happen when you get to work late? What productivity is? How to engage with colleagues? How to deal with customers if you're in a simulated environment? Real work experience is what is needed. Okay. Also, if you give companies the options to outsource and have no say into how those people are going to be acquiring proper work skills, they don't have to change their organization structures at all, do they? So you can have 450 learners that you've sponsored. The learnership service company provider must go and find hosts and everything. Why must I change anything about my business to be inclusive? Because it's already taken care of out there. Now, how are you going to absorb talent with a disability if you're not changing your structures? Work with the day-to-day. We have people with a disability in our organization as learners, as graduates, as interns, and as permanent employees. You start to recognize the value of this kind of diversity. You start to give meaningful workplace experience, and you start to get pressurized to flex on the way you do things to accommodate this kind of diversity. Make sense? Okay, so we need to look at the business value and move it to the top instead of starting with compliance. Nobody has thought to think about if we make our technology. How many of you know of text messaging? Our children don't know how to communicate in words anymore, do they? They WhatsApp. Okay, where do you think text messaging first came from? The need for people who were hearing impaired who also wanted to use a phone. The designers said, well, let's give text messaging because then people who can't hear can still communicate. And now it's an innovation that has caused billions of dollars of revenue all over the world, massive amounts of jobs and employment, and a whole sector of our generation that can't communicate in words. Am I right? So do not underestimate the value of this kind of diversity in innovation, in systems thinking, in thinking out the box, in doing things differently. It makes perfect business sense. Right. Skills development. What do we need to do? For those of you who are transferring skills, stop segregating, include. Okay? Secondly, make sure that if you are going to be sponsoring a learnership as an organization, that you are involved in saying, well, where do they work? How do they get these skills? Have the host environments had disability awareness training? Do the mentors and facilitators and line managers have support? Because they're not experts either. All those stereotypes around disability are still there. So you need someone who can help with that transformative thinking. Make sure that the host sites are inclusive, where people can equally and meaningfully compete. Because only then will you get the true value of this kind of diversity. And be strict. When your client says, I want 500 black females with a disability, but a little one, you say, well, no, that's not going to work for us. Let's just talk about this meaningfully. Be strict. Push back. I had a client the other day who had a vacancy for a person. They said, well, we've identified a job that's suitable for that disabled. And I was like, oh, what does that look like? And they said, well, we can accommodate, it's a tray washer position. We can accommodate someone whose one leg is slightly shorter than the other. I was like, is your floor slanted? Because the only way I could possibly imagine why you would order that is because maybe the floor goes that way. So if their one leg is shorter than the other, it's more organized. How do you possibly decide what position is suitable for the disabled? Do we decide what position is suitable for black people? Same. So flip your thinking. Diversity has been invited to the party. Disability is not about diversity and integration. Inclusion has been asked to dance. Okay. Our systems, our services, and our products are designed around this kind of thinking. Okay, it's working with the organizations, with the learnership service providers, and with people with a disability to say, flip your thinking and make sure that we are doing this inclusion properly, because only then can you tap into the talent. All right, we are at stand 41 if anyone has any questions. It's Bradshaw Consulting, and I would welcome you to come and ask me any questions that you may have. Thank you very much for your time.